What on earth is going on in Texas? It's kind of a complicated story, but it's also a really big story. So I'm going to walk you through it. Let me start here with what's been happening in Texas. So if you remember, um, Donald Trump is very concerned about the 2026 elections and, of course, 2028, but especially 2026, because if you think about the way the House of Representatives is currently set up, the Republicans are in control of it, but only by a razor thin majority. And that a lot of that is because of previous gerrymandering that gave the Republicans an advantage over the Democrats. So going into the 2026 election, even with those advantages, Trump and other Republicans are very concerned that they're going to lose control over the House of Representatives because Trump's approval ratings are in the dirt. Let's put it that way. Let me see. I looked at them last night. I think he's got 61% of Americans think he's done a bad job in office, and 38%, I think, off the top of my head, maybe 39%, maybe 37%, somewhere in there, approve of what he's doing. That's not a good thing for a president who almost always takes hits in a midterm election anyway for a number of reasons. So Trump is trying to find extra seats anywhere he possibly can. And the first place to which he turned was to Texas, because Texas has a supermajority or very strong majority of Republicans in the legislature, and it has a very staunch Republican governor who sort of is Trump light, if you will, and he's at the state level. And so Trump went to the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, a Republican, and asked him to call a special session of the Texas legislature to redistrict the state in order to find 5 more seats. That is, cut up the state in such a way that 5 Democrats would lose their seats and Republicans would pick those seats up this year before the 2026 election. Now, that is not unprecedented. Texas did it before in an attempt to grab power, but it's really almost never done because the states redistrict after every census, and the censuses are taken on the zero numbered years. So every decade, we had one in 2020, we'll have one in 2030, we'll have one in 2040, and so on. So the redistricting takes place in the year after that, or the 2 years after that, depending on how quickly the state legislature gets going. And that's why the 2010 elections were such a huge deal, because the Republicans launched something called Operation Red Map that enabled them to take over control of state houses. Lots of people don't pay attention to state house races, pay attention, to take over the state houses and then to gerrymander those maps. That is, either pack their opponents into really limited districts so the voting power of their opponents was diluted, or crack those populations. It's called cracking and packing, or packing and cracking, that diluted them so that they couldn't win actual seats in states like North Carolina, Ohio, Kansas, Michigan, Wisconsin. There were a whole bunch of them in 2010. Now, some of those states have been recovered for fair maps and fair districting, as Michigan has been, and that's a process that's ongoing. So anyway, Trump asked Abbott to call the legislature into special session to redo the maps in this 5th year into that process. Again, very, very unusual. But the Democrats, who recognize this as an extraordinary power grab, and this is in the House in Texas, the Democrats in the House recognize that this was, just a naked power grab. Texas is already gerrymandered, by the way. And 51 of them left Texas for Illinois, especially, but also for New York and Massachusetts. And they did that to deprive the Republicans of what's called a quorum. And a quorum is the minimum number of people you need to have present in order to conduct business. That is, a legislature, 2 people in the legislature can't get together and say, hey, we're the legislature, we're going to pass laws. There are laws about the minimum number of people you have to have in order to conduct business. So by leaving the state, those Democrats made it so that the Republicans couldn't pass these gerrymandered maps. They stayed out of the state until the first session, special session expired. It was for a limited amount of time. Abbott called one instantly again, and they can't stay out of the state forever. The legislature is a very much a part-time job. They all have lives. So they came back yesterday. They flew back in yesterday. And once they're back, they will provide the quorum that the Republicans need to smash through these maps, and they will get the extra 5 seats if those things pass, which it certainly looks like they will. But what they didn't foresee is that when they got home, the Republican Speaker of the House, a man named Dustin Burrows, insisted that they sign what they're calling derogatorily a permission slip. They signed a piece of paper that committed them to showing up for the votes to enable the Republicans to push through these maps. And part of that was that they would have state troopers surrounding them, that they would have guards on them as they went about their daily business to guarantee that they would show up to vote in the House of Representatives for these. They don't have to vote for the maps, but they have to be present so the Republicans can force the maps through. They also had to agree to this until the final vote on the measure, which I think is going to be in about 3 weeks. I can't remember that off the top of my head. So a number of them did that, but one woman who represents a majority minority district in Fort Worth, a woman named Nicole Collier, refused. She said, I think I have a quote from her here. She said, "I refuse to sign. I will not agree to be in custody. I'm not a criminal. I'm exercising my right to resist and oppose the decisions of our government. So this is my form of protest." She went on to say, "My constituents sent me to Austin to protect their voices and rights. I refuse to sign away my dignity as a duly elected representative just so Republicans can control my movements and monitor me with police escorts." She also pointed out that anybody who was escorting these 51 Democratic lawmakers wasn't actually on the beat doing their jobs. And she said, I hope you all feel safe with the Republicans doing that with your police officers. But when that happened, the Republican leadership forbade her from leaving the Capitol. So she was stuck in the Capitol under punishment, under threat of arrest, that if she stepped out of the Capitol, they would arrest her. Whether or not they locked the doors is not yet clear to me. So she spent the night in the Capitol, in the chamber last night. And when protesters showed up to chant, "Let her go," just troopers arrested them. Lots of protests there. But this morning, I think it was, or maybe this afternoon, morning her time, she filed a writ of habeas corpus saying that they're imprisoning me without, unjustly, and I want to be released from the Capitol building. So that's the specifics of what happened. But the larger picture of what happened is that the Republican leadership it's really important to remember in this case that this is not just about Texas, and it's not just about the Texas legislature. Having the Democrats there is the only way that the Republicans can hammer through this 5-seat power grab. And that 5-seat power grab is, they believe, imperative to them holding the House of Representatives in 2017. I'm sorry, no, 2026 after the 2027 after the 2026 elections. I'm sorry, I swim in years, and so I lose track of where we are. Just the way my brain works. Sorry about that. But so the attack on Representative Collier and the imprisonment of her to force her to do the will of the Republicans, not only at the state level, but also at the national level, so that they can hold power, even though it is very clear that the American people have soured on this administration and quite likely will vote against it in or will want to vote against it in the midterms is an attack on all of the rights of all Americans. They are essentially imprisoning her to force her to rubber stamp a one-party state, to rubber stamp authoritarianism. It's a really big deal.